There are lots of things you can spend your tax refund on, but one thing you don't have to spend it on, a new smartphone. Switch to Metro PCS now and get not one, but 2 free 4G LTE smartphones for brands like Samsung and LG. Plus, you're on T-Mobile's blazing fast nationwide 4G LTE network. Hurry! Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free smartphones after instant rebate. One heck of a deal, only at Metro PCS. Limited time offer. Sales tax not included in phone price. Coverage and services not available everywhere. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Peace and blessings. Habaragani. What's the deal? What's happening? Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Nat Turner Library Radio Show. I'll say it again. Welcome to the Nat Turner Library Radio Show. What are we talking about tonight? Tonight, once again, we are talking about relationship science, which is it is one of our favorite subjects on this show. So we're talking about black marriage and relationships, the hidden reason for failure and divorce revealed. Again, black marriage and relationships, the hidden reason for failure and divorce revealed. Okay, well, before we do that, I always have to give the standard intro, and that is, why do we call it the Nat Turner Library Radio Show? Well, some of you good people listening on the air may have heard that a certain actor has made a movie on Nat Turner, an independent movie. Nat Turner was the most successful leader of a slave revolt in the history of the United States. And my father purchased 123 acres in what we affectionately call Nat Turner territory here in Southampton County, the same county where the Honorable Minister Nat Turner led his slave revolt in 1831, August 22nd. My father, Elder Baba Khalifa, purchased this estate with his wife, dearly departed wife. May Allah be pleased with her. Allah God be pleased with her. Sister Rita Fard Khalifa. She passed away in 97. They purchased 123 acres out here, built a beautiful, spacious 5-bedroom home. They actually wanted to build a separate library wing, building actually, but instead they just included a huge library wing attached to the spacious house. And over the years, my father has given over 3,000 people a tour on the Nat Turner Trail, as we call it. My father is a publisher, distributor, journalist, and author of black books. He's published well over 500 books. He's written 18 different books himself. He is the original OG, if you will, on the Nat Turner Library Radio Show. He has graciously given Brother Michael Sixx and myself the helm of the controls of this show. And very soon we are going to be having an independent, if you will, book show. It's going to be a show dedicated nothing but our books, our story. So we don't want you to think that Nat Turner Library Radio is just what it has been, which has been, I dare say, I'm not going to be humble about it all. It's been tremendous. And you can bear witness to that by how the enemy came after us tonight, which is another subject which we'll get into a little bit later on. But, again, I'm not the main host for tonight, and we do have a very beautiful brother who's going to be our guest exclusive interview tonight. Brother Michael Sixx, why don't you take us a little bit further into the show? And I'd also like to give everybody out there in the listening audience a report on what's been happening over here at the Nat Turner Library.
Absolutely. Thank you there, Brother Khalifa Muhammad, the producer of the show. Let me first begin. As a Muslim, we always greet in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that He did appear to us in the person of Master Wali Fard Muhammad, who came 9,000 miles by himself to teach us what had been lost for over 66 trillion years, the knowledge of the God, and that is none other than Master Fard Muhammad. We thank him for raising up just one, the first begotten of the dead, the humble man of Georgia. I speak none other than the exalted Christ, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who now sits on the throne of the Christ. And I thank them both and bear witness in the teachings of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is indicative and reflective of the mercy and compassion and the final warner to the whole world that we all see today. the representative of the black man and woman of North America to the whole world, as we're seeing this week. And I greet you all in their names. In the words of peace and paradise, we say it, Assalamu alaikum. And to the 5% family, we say peace to the gods. To my Christian family, we say praise the Lord. To the conscious family, we say black power. And if I missed any greetings, just know it's just part of the thinking process, just not part of my heart. But as you were saying, Brother Khalifa, some things have been going on for Nat Turner Library this past week. Bring us up to date, audience. We're going to get into our main subject very soon, but Brother Khalifa, give us up to date exactly who was a special guest and what had happened this past week.
Well, this past weekend we had in the area Reverend Dr. Al Sampson. Dr. Sampson is one of 3 or 4 people on the planet Earth who was ordained by Martin Luther King Jr. He was literally in his inner circle. And he is not, no disrespect to our Christian brothers and sisters, but he's just not your ordinary Christian minister by a long shot. He is very black conscious, very spiritual at the same time, but he teaches on economic empowerment and that black people need to take control of our own food. Spiritual, but yes, also physical too. So, Brother Shelton Muhammad, who is the student study group coordinator out here, you really have to say right here in the area of Southampton County, Virginia. Right. He actually invited Reverend Dr. Sampson here to speak to several different churches, put him on a Black History program, and needless to say, the doors of these black churches open wide open to him. And he was literally meeting with these different churches and meeting with black farmers to open up a food distribution center here in this area. Now, I don't know about anybody else here in America, but this is nothing short of really revolutionary. You're talking about black people taking control of our own food. This is something that people who are awakened do. People who are asleep, we just go and buy food from, people who really don't care for us. We buy clothes, we buy everything. But at least he's addressing this one critical aspect of food. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said that the black farmer, or farmers in general, really get a short shrift. But, everybody got to eat. So anyway, we had him here at our home on Sunday. He very graciously came by and graced us with his presence and spoke for a nice little while here with our father. I'm going to go ahead and post a picture online. Actually, I have it on my regular page, but I'm going to go ahead and put it up in the event page as well as in the Nat Turner Library Radio fan page. And that's the report. And of course, we also want to, I know we're in Black History Day, week, month, lifetime. But we do have upcoming in June the annual Black Book Awards. I just want to go ahead and just drop that out there. Get ready. It's coming.
Okay, praise be to Allah. Now, the annual Black Book Awards is in sometime during the summer. Is that right?
It's always in the first weekend in June right here at the Nat Turner Library.
Right there at the Nat Turner Library. So, brothers and sisters, don't plan too much unless something big's going on for the first weekend in June. It's a great property. And you get to, this year, if it pleases Allah, you get to meet your brother, both Brother Khalifa and myself at Black Book Awards. And you get to see Elder Baba Khalifa and all the extensive library that he's been compiling. The Nat Turner Library itself, as Elder Baba Khalifa said when we interviewed him a few shows ago, is that's the beginning of a library where every book ever published by black people within this dispensation of 25,000 years that we have access to, of course. He is looking to compile that into what's known as the Nat Turner Library. And there are thousands of books currently. Is that correct, Brother Khalifa, in hand right now at the library?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thousands of books. Hey, this is something that the Library of Congress would love to have. I'm sure they have the biggest library known to man currently, but this is a black books publishing library. And it's something for you to see and see this beautiful property out there where Nat Turner himself led his revolt. Well,
yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. We want to also give a birthday shout-out, if we would, to Sister Nadira Khalifa, daughter of your sister and daughter of Elder Baba Khalifa. I think her birthday was a couple of days ago. Is that right, dear brother?
That's right. Her birthday was actually on February the 9th, and I'm not going to say what age she turned. I was getting ready to, and I realized this is still a woman we're talking about, so I'm going to go ahead and button my lip.
Yes.
Because discretion is definitely the better part of valor.
And she was, for quite a while, she held this down as the female representative of Nat Turner Library, so we always want to keep her in spirit and wish her a blessed birth anniversary. All right. Did we miss anything for the preliminaries, Brother Khalifa?
No, other than, I'll just say a last little bit on the technical difficulties that we had even before the show began.
Right.
For our listening audience, you are aware, or should be aware, that we've had some technical difficulties from time to time with our show. I think technical difficulties like that because we know that the enemy is busy. We're not talking about some, devil with a pitchfork underneath the ground either.
Right.
And before we could even get started with the show, a social media platform who I do not even want to give a shout-out to was giving us some major hassles and problems with advertising for our show tonight. Yeah, I don't even want to give them the free plug on that. Right. And they claim some lame excuse, and we really know the real deal. Someone out there is hot and upset with the fact that we will cover on our show how to address and heal the wounds in black male-female relationships and marriage. Right. Nobody really seems to want that at all. And the thought came to mind that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that our unity as black people is more powerful than an atomic bomb. So how powerful is a married black couple when they're in a good marriage? Right. Just some food for thought, family.
Well, Brother Khalifa, that's a perfect segue into what I'd like to introduce the subject matter to. Brothers and sisters, let me go through a couple of preliminaries. Of course, as we stated, you're listening to the Nat Turner Library Radio. This is our show concerning black marriage and relationships, the hidden reason for failure and divorce revealed. If you know of someone who, this isn't just about marriage and the usual what men should do, what women should do. We're going to get into that probably in the next show or two. But this here, we had to stop and hold everything because we did a survey that had some very revealing information, well, at least to myself, and we changed the format of what the show is going to be today to dealing with the hidden reason for failure and divorce because it jumped out on the survey right in front of me. And, we're going to address that, and we have a specialist to deal with that, a trauma intervention counselor and crisis intervention counselor who's active right now as we speak in a particular counseling session with these kinds of traumas. And he's en route to get onto the show. Brother Counselor Gerald King, a great conscious black counselor who has been in the work for around 30 years. But to listen to the show, if you don't have access to the Internet, if you're listening, great, then you can share the number with someone who would like to listen, who doesn't have access to the Internet, may have a cell phone or a home phone. That number to call in and listen, or call in if you'd like to make a comment after we've introduced the subject and introduced our guest for the night. The call-in number is 424, that's area code 424-258-9279. That's 424-258-9279. You can catch this from your cell phone, home phone, anywhere in the continental U.S., Canada, and even Mexico, I found out. Also, if you would like to join on and hear and see what we've been talking about, go on to Facebook and type into your Facebook search box, Nat Turner Library Radio. That's Nat Turner Library Radio, okay? And what that'll allow you to do is to be, and first of all, like our page, of course, and then you'll get the updates of what we've been dealing with on this particular show, and you can scroll down and see the dozens and dozens of other subjects we've dealt with. You can also go to blogtalkradio.com. That's blogtalkradio.com. Type in the search box Nat Turner Library Radio, and you will also see the laundry list of subjects that we've dealt with, stemming from this particular subject, which Brother Khalifa and I talked about. It was February 12th of 2015, last year.
Exactly 1 year ago, we covered this exact same subject.
1 year ago.
Relationship science, that's right.
Relationship Science 101. We dealt with this subject exactly a year ago.
Wow.
Well, what does that mean, brothers and sisters? That means that the universe and Allah himself is on the side of this subject matter during Black History Month. And as you were just stating, Brother Khalifa, this particular subject is the most important thing that I personally, brothers and sisters who have heard me speak, heard us speak, I'll say this in front of the audience tonight. This is the most personal, the most important, and the most critical, and I mean that in the clinical definition of critical, meaning of the utmost important, singular subject that I have ever dealt with or heard anyone ever speak about. You've heard us over the last year give some very good interviews with anywhere from politicians to different religious leaders to various ministers in the Nation of Islam to specialists dealing with marriage, so on and so forth, to people. You heard us play of many interviews and clips dealing with controversial conspiracy theories, things that are, and even dealing with UFOs. This right here pales, or not pales, but pales all the other subjects. This here is very important, the utmost importance, and I'll say that just as a segue. How we came about tonight's subject was not, I wouldn't say an accident. We don't believe in accidents in the Nation of Islam. We know everything is mathematic, and we know that the God who's in control of everything is a mathematic God, and he precisely organizes things in the universe to make things happen the way they're supposed to happen. That being said, it was about a month ago, I believe, over a month ago, Brother Khalifa, where you and I were talking on this particular subject. The original subject, which we're going to deal with, inshallah, next week or the week after, probably 2 weeks from now, or after Savior's Day.
After Savior's Day, exactly.
More than likely after Savior's Day. We don't want to bog too many people down before Savior's Day. Dealing with, the subject matter is dealing with boundaries in relationships. And so we did a survey because, you know, here at Nat Turner Library Radio, we don't deal with conjecture. We don't deal with hearsay. We don't deal with anything that isn't factually based. We have proof to back up what we're saying. And so we did a survey, 7 good questions. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you may not have seen it. And it deals with the specifics of boundaries within marriage. But the line of questioning had to do with, you know, what are you? Are you married? Are you unmarried? Divorced, engaged, so on and so forth. We'll go into the specifics in just a moment. But something popped out. And I want to jump right in. You know, hey, the only way I know how to deal with these things, as I've told family members in the past, is just to jump right in. Well, basically, we noticed that there was a trend. This trend, brothers and sisters, basically stated that there was a communication problem amongst black people within marriage. I'd like to read that question real quick, Brother Khalifa, if I may. It was question number 2 on the survey. And the question was, what are your biggest challenges in your marriage or relationship? Now, let's define something real quick. Relationship doesn't just mean boyfriend and girlfriend or someone that you're courting, okay? Relationship means anyone that you relate to. So it could be a friend. It could be your mother, your father, or someone you're relating to in your coworkers and whatnot. So, your biggest challenges in your relationship or marriage, these specific answers were to interpersonal relationships with the opposite sex for the purpose of mating. Okay, so we're going to actually deal with that. The number one problem that you, brothers and sisters, and we had dozens and dozens of answers, not just from members of the Nation of Islam, but from the diaspora of the black community. The number one rated problem was communication. Communication overwhelmingly was the number one problem that brothers and sisters said, Brother Khalifa, that they're having in interpersonal relationships with the opposite sex.
Yes,
I just wanted to define communication at this point so that way we're on the same page. Merriam-Webster, the authority in translating English, states, okay, that communication is the act or process of using words, sounds, signs, or in this case, behaviors. The act of using behaviors to express or exchange information, ideas, thoughts, and feelings to someone else. I'll say it again. The act or process of using words, signs, or behaviors to express or exchange information or ideas, thoughts and feelings, to someone else. Now, I'm going to put this on the Nat Turner Library Radio Facebook page so that we can actually use that as a starting point here. Now, that's a simple enough answer or a simple enough definition. So I thought, Brother Khalifa. Until I looked at the number 2 and 3 problem. Number 2, followed very closely to communication, is lack of trust. So immediately a light bulb came up. I said, communication, lack of trust. Poor communication, lack of trust. Well, I once heard, and I'm going to get a little personal here, because over in my sojourn of finding out my own personal life, but also dealing with some in my life and others throughout the course of my life, over 20 years of this research your brother Michael 66 had to go through to get some of the information we're going to discuss tonight. All right. Basically, I figured out something. The word communication shows up in black marital problems, but also black family problems overwhelmingly. All right, are you with me so far, brothers and sisters? Communication shows up as a problem overwhelmingly over and over again. Okay? Now, I've heard people say, Brother Khalifa, various pastors, various preachers, various institutions yell and scream from rostrums and podiums that, you know, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this, we need to do that. And the idea is to humiliate or shame people into acting right. That's an old draconian, if you understand the word, brothers and sisters, it's an old basic animalistic thinking to make someone get right by yelling at them. That's something you do to animals and animalistic behaviored individuals, such as rebellious young children, okay? That doesn't work with conscious or adult individuals. So I still see...
It doesn't work well with children.
Right, it doesn't even work well with children, as we're finding. So what we're noticing is that when you hear men and women of God and specialists yelling and screaming about what to do, they usually don't know, Brother Khalifa, I find, how to solve the problem. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I mean, they usually don't. So let's jump into...
As they say,
yes, sir.
Common sense is not common these days.
It definitely isn't. Let's jump right in, okay? Now I'm going to skip forward because we're going to deal with some of these answers a little later, probably in the next show. I'm going to find something very interesting. Most of the brothers and sisters that were in a marriage or a relationship of some sort with the opposite sex, that was approximately 68%, I'm going to say 70% of our people had some kind of relationship. Okay, so that was interesting. Now, the others were single, okay? Of those that had the relationships, 30% of them, which was the largest number, were only married or in a relationship for 2 to 5 years, which is fairly small, okay? All right, let's go back to the other numbers. Now, that number we just went through is going to mean something in just a moment. 70% of those polled, meaning the ones that actually took the survey, were women, heterosexual females. The other 30% were heterosexual black males, okay? Now, here's where it gets interesting. And we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of the subject tonight. Where did you learn about intimate relationships? All right, so of the people polled, the number one or the overwhelming answer was friends, okay? Number two answers were books, all right, and also house of worship. Why is that important? Friends, or people we associate with in our things, this is where we learn relationships from. If they're not trained and educated on the science of mating, they're not going to give you good advice. And more often than not, according to these statistics, they themselves have not been trained. So we have the blind leading the blind. Here's the subject at hand, brothers and sisters. The other stuff was just leading up to this. This is question number 6. And again, we're going to go over to the findings of this survey in other shows, but later on in the show as well. Have you ever had any of these happen to you? Now, that means, this is anonymous now. That means that any of the following things have they ever happened to you? We had rape, which included statutory rape, which means a person who was over 18, in some states over 21, having sexual relations with someone underage, which the reason that is a critical point is because the mind of an underage individual is not stable enough or mature enough to handle the implications of sexual relations. We hear about this all the time, but no one really goes into the reason why this is an illegal thing. It's illegal because the child, yes, 15, 16, 17-year-old, doesn't know the implications of intimate relationships with someone 25 or 30.
Can I say this very quickly, Brother Michael?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You may have noticed, like I've noticed, that there are a few European countries that are now legalizing child molestation.
Yes.
I just want to put that out there. I'm just going to
namely, I believe Germany is one of those. I believe when I read, and you are correct in what I read as well.
Yes, sir.
They actually, it was my mother, may Allah be pleased with her, who put me on to study of that. She was studying that very subject several years ago. She had since returned to the essence, of course, but she told me that many European, her words exactly, my mother's words were, many European men go over to some of these second world countries for the purpose of having sexual relations with young girls, in some cases young boys, legally, where there is no age statute of limitation or statutory rape thing there. So you got dirty old white men, let's put it straight out there, who are having sexual relations with 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls and boys without the problems of getting arrested. So they're going on vacations. Oh, yeah, we went to Ixtapa, or we went to Malaysia, or not Malaysia, Indonesia, or some other place. Well,
or Thailand,
we would think that, or Thailand, right. We would think that, oh, this sounds like a great thing to do, but in actuality, many of them are there to do dirt that they can't do in their respective country.
That's right.
That being said, rape, including statutory, incestual rape, date rape, which usually involves some sort of barbiturate or intoxicant or hallucinogen or barbiturate that makes the person incapacitated so they don't even know what's happening to them. But it's rape nonetheless, which is the forcible act of committing sex on another without consent. It's forcible, okay? That's rape. Molestation, which is the touching and the groping of sexual organs and sexual parts or private parts of anybody, pretty much, without their consent. All right. Incest, which we know is when there's sexual relations with a male or female member of a family that is usually within the immediate family or extended family that is beyond or within the second cousin realm. That's called incest, usually old to young. Traumatic assault, which includes physical attacks, okay, or witnessing, the witnessing of a traumatic assault or attack on someone else. Public sexual humiliation, which is self-explanatory, I believe. Parental divorce, which is so common today, but later on, hopefully, our Counselor King, he'll get into why that's traumatic, and any others that may not have been listed. But of those, Brother Khalifa and brothers and sisters that are listening, of all these horrible traumatic events, which those who study Dianetics, we know these are engrams that have severe implications on the subconscious of the brain, 70% of our people have experienced this. I want to let you marinate on that. 70% of the black men and women in North America, from our various surveys, has experienced one or more of these events. Now, I'm going to make something real sad here. I'm going to say something really sad. It would be nice if, well, I shouldn't say nice, but it would be better if one of our people or our people experience only one of these. That's bad enough. But, Brother Khalifa, according to what I'm reading, 45 to 50% of those of the 70% that experience events had multiple of these events happen.
Yes, sir.
Multiple rapes, multiple molestations, incest, traumatic assaults, parent experiences and parental divorces, public sexual humiliation. These things are just a few of the traumatic events that have been here. Now, we're going to go into a brief commercial break, brothers and sisters, and that's going to lead us up to our guest, who is now holding online. But we're going to go into a brief commercial break, and we're going to discuss these events and why this is affecting and causing failure in relationships and ultimately divorce. We'll be back, and you are listening to the Nat Turner Library Radio Show.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Hey, have you ever been curious to see what the Nation of Islam is all about? Have you heard what we're about and don't really think it's something you might be interested in being involved in? Well, there's a great book out here by our own Khalifa Muhammad of Nat Turner Library Radio. It's called Nation of Islam, Frequently Asked Questions. Let me tell you a little more about him. He's been a 2-decade member of the Nation of Islam, born in the Bronx, New York. He's held numerous positions in the Nation of Islam, including student minister, student prison minister, student secretary, student lieutenant, student captain, and managing editor of the Southern Regional Mosque newsletter, Voice of the People. He's a well-qualified brother, and I want to talk to you about some of the great information that's discussed. Things like, did you know that there's a lot of women's rights inside of Islam? You know, there's a huge difference between what you hear on media and basically questions like, does the NOI advocate violence? Well, Islam teaches self-defense, never to be the aggressor in words, deeds, or actions. Violence is only allowed in the act of self-defense. These are some of the great things that you'll get to learn about the Nation of Islam. So whether you're a current member of the Nation of Islam, an aspiring member, someone who just wants to know more about the group, definitely get the book, Nation of Islam, Frequently Asked Questions by Khalifa Muhammad. It's available at Amazon.com or at blackebooks.com. blackebooks.com. That's blackebooks.com. Definitely, this is brought to you by your brother, Michael 6X from Nat Turner Library Radio. And we're back. Brothers and sisters, you are listening to the Nat Turner Library Radio show. I am your host, Brother Michael 6X, and we have our producer, Brother Khalifa Muhammad. And tonight's subject, once again, is, as we stated, the most important, most revealing, most, I would say, elusive subject that I've ever had to talk about when this air. We're going to be discussing, brothers and sisters, some very sensitive things that are very sensitive to you. So if I or anyone sound a little cavalier or anything that is abrasive about the subject, please try not to be offended. We don't mean to do that. We just want to make sure we convey this information to you so that you yourself and anyone that you love can benefit from what will be discussed tonight. Tonight's subject, again, is about black marriage and relationships, the hidden reasons for failure and divorce revealed. Brother Khalifa, we have our special guest on, Counselor Brother Gerald King. And Brother King, are you there?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Well, alaikum salam. Thank you for taking time out your busy schedule with us.
You're welcome.
Well, I wanted to first, have the audience. You and I have spoken on a few occasions, and
yes.
We've spoken at length. And you are very passionate about this subject. And I'd like to take a moment to have you get our audience familiar with your history, and we'll jump right in and see if there's anything that we've missed, in the history. I had it put out there that you were been a counselor in crisis and trauma intervention for around 30 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And is any other history that I know that's enough for us? But any other history that
I can add more. I've got some background in working for the United Nations back in the 90s, where I worked in the Rwandan genocide process, and so I've been doing this internationally as well. So I've been exposed to trauma for many years. So I've kind of have lived it and have served it in ways in terms of trying to help people bring their communities back together.
Well, I appreciate that. That by itself, when you said Rwanda. And the genocide of Rwanda, and you helped to counsel some of the people there. Am I correct in that?
You're correct.
That alone, wow, I'm blown away. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
That alone is about as traumatic as you can get.
There's more. Well, there's more if you care to know, but I would prefer to keep that confidential at the moment. But I have a huge background just in dealing with trauma, period. I think it's very important. I think it really relates to the topic that you're speaking to as well. Most people probably would not connect trauma with troubles in the family and couples and relationships with the African American community. They probably don't even connect that, but it's very much connected.
Right. Well, that being said, let's jump right in. And I guess I can start it off by saying I think I'll share with the audience the conversation you and I had, and then I'll just let you take the floor from there, Counselor King, to share with us what your findings and your very extensive experience has shown. I actually, I wouldn't say, we don't really believe in accidents, but I came across this subject unintentionally, because I was actually looking for some of the boundaries that relationships have had problems with, such as, men staying out too late, women dressing too revealing, and that being a problem relationship. I was looking for that kind of stuff. But I ran across, during the survey I took, as I stated, earlier to you last week, that 70% of our people, and I think you probably heard part of what I was saying in that particular issue, 70% of our people, black people in America, have experienced And 50% of the ones, and this is just our own personal survey, 70% of our people had experienced some form of traumatic event as defined by traumatic. And of those, 50% experienced multiple types and multiple times. Yes. Well, I'm not qualified to talk about this, so I'd like you to walk us through. You had mentioned something very interesting a couple weeks ago with me. You said that you believe those statistics were very understated. And what would you had said there were some stats that you think were a little more revealing. What would you say is more accurate number of our people?
I would say, just intuitively, because, these kinds of studies are very specified, and based on who they were, how they were measuring it. I think as well as I do in the African American community, we're naturally quite suspicious about being tested on anyway, and there is a natural attitude, amongst African Americans, where there's a lot of shame-based behaviors. We consider them as shame-based behaviors, but they really are not, right? So I can probably say that most African Americans, hopefully most African Americans, understand that our community it has been the target of heaps of trauma. Physical and psychological and spiritual. We've got 300-year history of slavery here. When you have that kind of concentration of trauma on a group of people over that period, a span of time, that kind of exposure has a way of affecting the brain that the people who are experiencing the traumas don't have any real insight onto or into. So, for example, the people who are exposed to trauma, eventually, if we're exposed to it long enough, it can literally affect the physiology of our brain, which is called neuroplasticity, right? If you've seen the brain has all those ripply lines in it, right? You see these grooves in it. Well, those are nerve endings. There's also studies that indicate that if trauma is not dealt with in a healthy way, then these habits of thinking ultimately get transmitted and can become endemic and genetic on the population, which says a lot. That says a lot.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment. I'd like you to say that one more time.
All right.
Because somebody somewhere, he was yawning. I didn't hear it, but I just know our people. Somebody somewhere was talking to their child and didn't hear that. Somebody somewhere needed to hear that one more time. Please repeat that, Counselor King, one more time.
That over a period of time, right, if there are like maybe 4 or 5 generations that have been exposed to any kind of constant trauma, whether physical, psychological, or spiritual, eventually that can have an effect on the physiology of the brain, which is the nervous system. Okay?
Wow.
So once the nervous system is affected, eventually that can show up as a genetic process. In other words, it's handed down in our genes. Right. And that's profound.
That is profound. That's reminds me of the scripture, Brother Khalifa, you probably remember, it says, if the sins of the fathers transmitted to the children. I think it's Amos. There's one in the Bible we posted earlier, Amos 4:6, which talks about your rejection of knowledge. It's going to affect your children, basically. That sounds a lot like it, and the knowledge we're talking about today, Counselor King, is, okay, what is this thing called trauma? That's the knowledge that I want to really make plain, because, we can talk intelligently, amongst about the subject, but right now we got someone sitting here listening, at least someone across the country who's listening and doesn't quite understand what trauma is. from a clinical definition, what would you define trauma?
The analogy that I would like to use is someone has a car accident, right? Someone's driving, all of a sudden the car gets sideswiped, okay? The people in the car that got hit, they survived it, but the very impact of the car being hit had caused a kind of a shock to the nervous system. So in other words, when we experience a sudden event that harms us, that particular event is like a photograph that stays in the nervous system. It stays there. It freezes, right, until it is recognized over a period of time. But it freezes. That's trauma. So once it stays in the nervous system, eventually, if it's not dealt with, then it begins to affect other parts of our behavior and our brain and our physiology and our behaviors.
Now, let me make sure I understand this, because this is just to make sure I break it down. I've learned when I was a sales manager that, you know, when you're selling something, you have to make sure the other person understands. So I'm gonna make sure I understand. So I'll repeat it back to you.
No problem.
I want to make sure I understand.
Right.
So okay, let's get it like this. We have a traumatic event. That means something very aggressive, either physically, emotionally, or spiritually happening to us. That is negative usually. Okay.
Yes.
It is
or a threat to our life, pretty much. It's a threat to our life.
A threat to our life. Okay, that's a better. I like that term. I like that term.
Right.
Okay. An existential event happens that threatens our well-being.
Yes.
It puts like a photograph or an image in our brain.
Yes, it tends to freeze in the nervous system. The event is like it freezes, right? I've been in car accidents, and if you can kind of recall any kind of event that you've been in, you may notice it takes time for you to kind of get over the shock, if you will. Okay. That experience of getting over the shock is the photograph. It's like it just stays in the nervous system. We are frozen in that moment.
Okay, so we're frozen there.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So a lot of people assume that because they have survived it, right, that the trauma is over. No, it's not. It stays in the memory. So the event stays in the nervous system. It stays there. It stays there.
Okay.
Even though we walk around going back to our so-called normal lives.
All right. So let me follow you with that. I want to make sure I break this down. So we got Ray in the projects.
Right.
His friends got shot and killed. He's seen it happen.
Yes.
Okay. Ray is now drinking a 40-ounce of beer to get rid of the pain.
Exactly.
But it doesn't go away because he still has the image of his friend getting shot and killed in front of him. So he goes every day to get him a 40-ounce, and after a while, the 40-ounce doesn't numb the pain. He gets now a fifth of something even harder in alcohol. Am I correct in that statement?
You are correct, sir. I do men's trauma groups at an institute that I work at now, and I relate addictive behaviors to trauma. So Ray, who is getting some beer or drinking to kind of deal with the death of his friend, is actually re-traumatizing himself by drinking. He's adding on to the trauma.
Okay.
He's not doing anything about it. He's re-traumatizing himself through drinking.
Okay. All right. That's real interesting. Because I part-time, I drive professional, for hire driving in some of the poor neighborhoods of Atlanta. And I see brothers and sisters alike who are affected by alcohol, and weed is about as common in the black community as fresh air to a bird, it seems like. And I'm sitting here like, I didn't grow up, seeing this like this, and I never partake of the stuff. I thank Allah for that. But I'm seeing this, and I'm saying to myself, what are our people escaping from?
Yes.
in order to the need to be inebriated, I'm like, there's something they're escaping. But I'll talk to the brother or sister, and I'll find out real quick that the brother has something horrible that he's escaping from. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know it.
Right.
But he just started smoking weed or drinking alcohol, and before you know it, it's now alcoholism.
Yes.
So we treat the alcoholism in our community, but we don't treat the core. So the brother goes back and he has recidivism, or he returns back to the alcoholism because the core trauma hasn't been affected. Am I correct in that statement?
You are absolutely correct. Right on.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So continue what you were saying about these endemic photographs. You had left off right there.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying, that's my analogy, that's my example as to how trauma operates. It is a frozen event. So back to your example about the recidivism of alcoholism, a person gets sober, then he ends up drinking again, right? Because the trauma has not been addressed. So, so the trauma is still there. It's still frozen, if you will, in the nervous system. So he's going to go back and drink.
Gotcha.
Or smoke weed, or shoot heroin, or whatever whatever substance they resort to. But the use of substances and alcohol is really a result of poor coping skills to actually be able to kind of deal with the trauma that has taken place. And there are ways of dealing with trauma. You don't have to smoke weed or drink to deal with it. There are ways of dealing with it besides having to resort to drinking.
Absolutely. Okay, well let's jump into the meat and potato. Brother Khalifa, you have any questions for Counselor King at this point?
No, sir. No, not at this point. It's it's we have members of the audience who are familiar with Dianetics, and it's just it's just in harmony with again what I've been reading in that subject matter. I'm enjoying it. Please keep on going, please.
I got a question for you, Counselor King. How much time do you have for us?
As much time as you have.
Okay, good. Okay, because we're just now opening, I liken this subject to doing a surgery. And I've seen surgery done only once.
Yes.
And they prep the body. They make sure the patient's anesthetized. Well, we don't have anything to anesthetize the audience, but we jump right into the surgical wound here. So let's jump right in and see the problem now. The statistics that I'm showing, would you say that 70% of black people, or as you put it, African Americans, have experienced some sort of traumatic event along those lines? Or would you say, because I remember you and I were saying it's higher than that.
Yes, I'm saying that it's higher than that because, if you consider the years of slavery and the transmission of the behaviors that our ancestors transmitted to us, it wasn't their fault, but they were trying to survive. What happens is we get the same kind of trauma subliminally, if you will. In other words, it's in the media, it's in the music. So there are the cultural environment has a way of triggering traumatic events in African Americans. And now, right now, it's not a problem because we've had Ferguson. We're now seeing the increase in African Americans being shot on the streets. They're showing it on TV, right? So I think so. That's why I say it's more than that, because they probably are not including how it's getting out in the media and what kind of effect it has in re-traumatizing African Americans. Much less ourselves,
Yeah, so we make sure I got this correct. So just the witnessing, watching the news, for example.
Yes.
Just witnessing Trayvon Martin getting shot, or Eric Garner getting choked to death, or Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, getting shot in the times. Just the witnessing of that is a traumatic event.
Right. Those events trigger the historical legacy of trauma in this country for African American population. That's my assessment of it. So that's why I say it's more than 70%. You see.
Gotcha. Now I want to go into the most disturbing most personal. Counselor King and Brother Khalifa, I've talked with people on this particular aspect of trauma that I'm about to mention on several occasions in my life. And, man, Counselor King, I stepped on a landmine because I saw things come out of these individuals that had experienced this that I never knew. 'Cause I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm just a brother who likes to help people. You see what I'm saying? Yes. And when you go and you mention these things and you're not a trained person to deal with the mind, you'll deal with things that, frankly, you're not prepared to deal with. So I've talked with many on rape, particularly.
Yes.
I know of some brothers. Now, this isn't a gender-specific thing. For so long, we've said women have been the main, if not the only, recipients of rape. I disagree with that. Would you agree that there are a percentage of men, particularly black men, that have also been raped?
Oh yes. I mean, I think I was talking to a brother years ago who was born in Mississippi and other areas. He was in the civil rights movement. This is not talked about that much, but during slavery, the master had his way with the wife, the child, and the father.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Lord have mercy.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about it. We should.
Wow.
And I think that's replicated in the prisons. You see?
Wow. I had a conversation, Counselor King, with a parole officer back in November. No, I'm not on parole, brothers and sisters that are listening. But one of my clients was a parole officer, a white female, as a matter of fact. And so it was about a 15-minute ride, and she mentioned what she did for a living. She was from Wisconsin, and she said to me, she said to me what she did. So I asked her some open-ended questions. I said, I got a question for you, because I like to pick professionals' brain so I can help put together some of this stuff. I said to her, okay, what happens when a prisoner gets raped in prison nowadays? We watch the movies. And she said, well, there's a different process now than what it used to be. It used to be that it was just brushed aside and not even mentioned. She said, now there's charges that can be brought up. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. But I remember, Brother Khalifa, I remember Dr. Aleem Muhammad mentioned that in his assessment, he came here to Atlanta and he gave a lecture, and he said that most of our brothers that are coming out of prison, as you were saying, Counselor King, he said the same thing. He said that most of the brothers are coming out of prison, they're not coming out okay. They've been raped.
Yes.
They've been, molested, at least. They've seen traumatic assault, and they're thrown into society and said, go forth and prosper. What's your take on that with the brothers coming out of prison?
If I could just say that, it sounds, there's an exact parallel between that and men coming home from a theater of war.
Right.
There's no debriefing.
Right.
But please continue, brother.
Yes, sir. So, Counselor King, what's your, comment on that reality with our brothers coming out of prison, particularly?
Right. Well, I mean, for me, it's a setup. I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, but it's a setup in terms of more trauma returning back to the community. So you're going to have these brothers who've been traumatized. They've seen particular behaviors, and all they can do is behave the same way in the communities. So they end up abusing women, abusing kids, abusing the community, perhaps to a certain degree abusing the property in the community, because that's all they know.
Now, the drum is rolling right now. The drum is rolling. I got the fictitious drummer rolling right now, and I want to ask you the key question of the night.
Yes.
Is there a connection between rape, molestation, incest, traumatic assault, parental divorce, public sexual humiliation, and other traumatic events, and relationships in the black community?
Yes, to me it is because I work with African American couples a great deal, and the glue that keeps couples together is communication. If someone has unaddressed trauma, they're going to have a difficult time communicating.
Say that one more time, please.
If one has unaddressed trauma, if it's not addressed or known, or if they're not working on it, there's going to be problems with the communication style between the couple.
Oh, wow. Explain that in detail, please. Please.
So, for example, if someone is traumatized, one of the manifestations of unaddressed trauma could result in anxiety, or someone not able to get enough sleep, or let's say the way the person is trying to deal with the trauma is through drinking, right? So the mind itself is not clear at all. There's no everything that's said between two people, it's taken personally, and that's when it starts. We don't have the language that occurs with unaddressed trauma. It's going to obscure the communication channel between the man and the woman. It's going to occur. So if you have a man who got out of prison, was perhaps raped, he's probably going to question his manhood. He's going to say, well, okay, for me to be a man, I must get married. So he gets married, and he doesn't talk about the trauma to his wife, and it's on. He's going to assert himself in a way that proves himself as a man. But what's driving that sense of himself as a man is the trauma. That's what's driving the communication with her. You got to deal with the trauma first before we jump into society and think, okay, everything is okay. It's not, because we don't know how to communicate yet if the trauma is there. Or if anything, we need to know that we're traumatized and be more accountable for it.
Wow, that's revealing. That's very revealing. Because I don't know if you heard the statistics before you came on, Counselor King, that I was going through in our survey. The number one complaint that black people in America are having, according to our research and in our own survey, and we had dozens and dozens of compliance with this. The number one complaint is communication. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, right. I'm not surprised at all, and I think it kind of gets back to the symptoms of trauma. Trauma manifests first in the person that has experienced it. So that means that we're having problems with communicating with ourselves because the trauma is there. We don't know who we are. You see, there are symptoms that we can't speak through the anxiety. We don't know why we can't sleep. We're worried. We're having problems just understanding ourselves when trauma has not been addressed. So how can one speak to another one if we can't communicate with ourselves in a clear way?
Right. All right. Now, I'm feeling the energy that's out there. Right now, there's a brother and sister who's listening, or, we have a lot of our listeners that listen to this in the archive, which means that they'll listen to it tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So they're hearing this, and they're shaking because you're hitting the very pain point that they are dealing with. They experienced one of these traumatic events that we discussed earlier. They are having communication problem with their significant other. Okay. They feel the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, Counselor King, they feel the sense of existentiality where they either are going to fail in their relationship or they, in some cases, they're suicidal, where they don't see a way out other than suicide. Am I correct in that?
Yes. I imagine that can occur in that kind of thinking, right? That kind of thinking is from the trauma.
Explain.
That kind of thinking comes from being traumatized. You see.
Okay. So make sure
it's
I understand. When a person's traumatized, they resort to the thinking of all or nothing, or
yes, black and white
all
thinking.
this way or all that way.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
It's called black and white thinking. A more clinical term is cognitive distortion. Right? We see something, and if we're viewing it from the view of being traumatized, what we're seeing is the trauma. So, for example, I've worked with couples where the wife says, "I don't like when you raise your voice at me." Right? Then I ask her, "Well, why? What happens to you when he raises his voice?" She says, "Well, it reminds me of my father beating me, or it reminds me of when I witnessed my father beating my mother."
I see.
You see?
I see. Let me help our people, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan does this himself. He talked about his feelings about his mother not loving him when he was a young man, and how that affected him. I'm going to say the same here. We don't believe in sitting there and having come to Jesus meetings and all that, but I will say this: I have witnessed in my own psychology exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
If I have that feeling of being slighted, if you would,
yes,
the first thing that comes to mind is those little Jewish kids I went to school with that used to mock me and say, "You don't know what you're talking about. You're nothing but a dumb nigga." Excuse me, it's a rated R show, so I can say that. You're nothing but a dumb so-and-so, so you don't know what you're doing. So immediately I go to the aggressive stage and say, "Oh, yes, I do." Now, those Jewish classmates of mine that I grew up with in upstate New York, I hadn't seen them in over 20-something years.
Yes.
But that's an unresolved traumatic thinking that I've had in my own head.
Yeah.
And so I understand. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. And I must say, in that kind of event, you were shamed, right? Shaming is traumatizing also. Shaming is also traumatizing because your very being was assaulted. Your existence was assaulted. You don't know what you're talking about.
Gotcha.
That's traumatizing on a spiritual level and on an emotional level.
Yes, sir.
Wow. That level of shame is would you categorize public shaming or shaming as a traumatic event?
Yes. Shaming is traumatizing on a spiritual and an emotional level.
Wow. Now, there's the shame that a person feels when they've done something wrong, and then there's what we call public shaming. Which one would you say is
public? And I think specifically for the African American population, our history of trauma, the history of trauma, it was done on all levels. When they would, if you've seen those, I was witnessing a documentary on lynchings the other day, right? And they got the brothers lynched on the tree with the white people pointing at it, right? That's public. That's public. And it includes the entire existence of those brothers who were hanging off the tree. First, they were probably tortured in front of people, all that. So shaming starts. So the whole process starts with shaming publicly. That's where it begins, and then it can go from there.
8% of those we polled were sexually publicly humiliated. I don't even know what that means, but I put it there.
Yes.
So,
yes. I'm not surprised.
Explain what public sexual humiliation entails. This is a rated R show, so feel free to speak.
Probably, if it's a sister, right? She probably got her clothes torn off her in front of people, and her body was exposed. Right? Our ancestors were sold naked on the slave stage. When they were being sold, most of them were naked. That's shaming. For Africans, it's very, we don't. It's different. We have a different sense of our body and exposure to the public. But most of our ancestors were probably so naked. That's shaming.
Wow.
It's traumatizing.
Yes, sir.
Now the number one traumatic event, because I want to stay here for a moment, because I'm getting some pretty good responses from the people on the show so far. They're tuning in. And brothers and sisters, if you're listening, this is Nat Turner Library Radio. We're on with Counselor King, and we're talking about the connection right now between traumatic events and marriage, black marriage, and its connection to black marriage failure. And we're digging into the meat of it right now as we speak. One of the number one things, Counselor King, I want you to comment on that. It's actually the number one traumatic event, and it's parental divorce. Now, I had a sister say to me last week that parental divorce is not traumatizing. However, the sister who said that had her parents still intact in a marriage.
Right.
So I'm sitting there like, okay, I don't want to say, well, you don't know what you're talking about, but I'd like you to comment and let the audience know, because right now, Counselor King, in our community, the black community, divorce is as common as eating a Subway sandwich at Subway. And
well, if you go back to I'm sorry to cut you off. My mind's really
no. That's okay. No.
Because I get where you're coming from. I think if we go back to the struggle to keep a family intact during slavery, right? When parents split up, this is replicating that kind of historical experience, if you will, in the African American community. The families were never allowed to stay intact. So I think what it does, it triggers the collective psyche in the African American community about that.
Yes, sir.
You see, it triggers it, whether or not they are aware of it or not. I think that's what goes on. So I feel that it is traumatizing, but it is triggering a historical experience within the community.
Okay. So we make sure I got this part correct. We know that parents that break up hurt the children more than anything. I think anyone that knows that, I mean, I've seen that in my own family. It's horrible. It messes up the children. But what you're saying is a little different, and it's actually, I never really looked at it that way. What you're saying is we're tapping into the genetic memory bank of stating, and correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, that we actually see it as a necessary thing to break up the family, because that's what we had to do when we were slaves.
We can. We can, but I mean, I personally don't feel that there's enough literature out there that addresses that kind of instinctive, habit, if you will, in the African American community. But communication is the aspect, is a factor that causes that to occur. So if we cannot communicate, and we've already established that unaddressed trauma addresses or convolutes any capacity to communicate between two people.
Right.
So if that's what's going on, and the kids are witnessing the parents fight back and forth, they're witnessing the unaddressed trauma, perhaps between both parents. You see, so it gets handed down. So yes, it's not. I don't think the fact that we are that it's intentional that we split up. I think that there's a collective force, invisible force, that we all have that we haven't really addressed or shined some light on to see. Okay, if I want to get married, I need to look at my history. When I work with couples, I ask the man and the woman to write out a narrative. I ask them to write their history.
Okay.
Everything, to disclose it with no shame. Then they read it. Then they read it to each other. You see, and then and normally what's in there is trauma, abuse, and addiction.
Okay, so I want to make sure I got, because that's exactly what I wanted to get to. So the narrative that you would have to existing marriage couples, and I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong, those that are aspiring to be married.
Yes. Is
to write your narrative. And this narrative includes both the good and the bad, but it's full disclosure. It's full disclosure.
It's full disclosure. And what I do is I set a contract with both of them before they read it. They have to agree that what they're going to hear, they have to hear it for the sake of the marriage, so the marriage can last.
Okay, say that one more time. Why is full disclosure necessary in marriage?
Because you understand the other. You understand why your partner might behave in a particular way.
Okay.
And you don't take it personal, right? Not only that, but normally a similar pattern is also on the other, let's say in this case, the wife's family. So let's say the wife also has a particular history. You normally will see parallels or connections with the kind of trauma that's in both of their narratives. And I work on that because that's the stuff that's going to get in the way with the communication. It's that stuff.
Wow. This is great stuff, Counselor King. This is exactly what I was suspicious was going on, because I was telling Brother Khalifa, you remember we were talking about this about 3-4 weeks ago? I said, I'm seeing on these surveys is not what I was expecting. I was expecting something a little less provocative. And I said, wait a minute, I got to make sure that we're talking about this in a very intelligent manner. So I had to solicit the services of someone who's been dealing with this. And what you're doing now is you're doing some very deep surgery on the psyche of our listening audience right now. I'm seeing some responses, Counselor King, and it's very positive. You're getting through to so many people right now, and you will be in the coming weeks. I want to continue the surgery, though, if I may.
I understand.
Okay?
Keep going.
All right. All right. Now let's deal with the most traumatizing thing I think can happen. You have, in our community, just so I make sure it's clear, rape, we know what rape is.
Yes.
Then there's incest.
Yes.
Now, I didn't realize that incest was so prevalent, but nearly 15% of those who we surveyed are victims of incest.
Yes.
Now, when I saw that number, I said, wait a minute, 15%?
Well,
what
I
happens?
I would suspect that is more than that.
Yes, based on what you were saying earlier, because people people try to hide that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, incest, let me put the question to you this way so that we can get the answer out. You have a young man, a young woman who grew up with a family member. It could be father or mother, uncle or aunt, grandparent, cousin, brother, sister, whatever. They did some sexual impropriety to them.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the brain once that happens?
Well, speaking psychologically, they're emotional. Well, based on the age, their existential and spiritual boundaries have been violated.
Say that again.
Right. Their existential and spiritual, emotional boundaries, right, have been violated.
Okay. Explain that.
Right. Now, so in other words, Johnny, who is 5, gets molested or incest by an alcoholic mother, the alcoholic mother, right? Johnny is aware to a certain degree as to what family roles should be. Should my mother be doing this to me? Now, Johnny may not have the language to say no, but inside of his being, he knows this is not supposed to be happening. So let's say Johnny is 7 years old, and what Johnny does, Johnny internalizes that event. In other words, it becomes a part of him because he doesn't have the language to either tell mother to stop, or he knows why is my mother doing this to me.
Okay, gotcha.
Or what did I do to have my mother do this to me?
Okay. What happens to Johnny's brain at that moment of incest that he continues to bear until he's properly counseled?
Johnny becomes very confused about who and what he is. Very confused. So Johnny is going to try to think his way, okay, how do I work this out, right? If Johnny's 7 years old, he doesn't have the emotional wherewithal to even find the language as to how to work it out. So he's confused. He's confused about himself. Very confused. And at the same time, becoming confused about women.
Okay.
Mistrustful, you see.
Could I go back to statistics for a moment?
Sure.
In our survey, the number 2 problem that was identified amongst couples as what they said was, hold on a second, let me go back, make sure I'm picking this up correctly. I want to read, okay, yep, number 2 problem was lack of trust.
Yes.
Number 1 was communication. Number 2, well, let me read the actual numbers. 46% said that the number 1 issue was communication. 43% said the number 2 or the number 1 was lack of trust. Would you say that, based on the analogy you gave with Johnny and his mother, and in some cases, Keisha and her father, or Keisha and the mother, whatever it may be, whatever possible permutation of incestual relationship that may have existed, would you say that trust is broken and is still questioned even in the adult world from incest?
Yes, especially if it's kept quiet, right? Because so there's a quality of shame that Johnny or Keisha is going to experience because of what happened. So they're going to keep it to themselves. They're going to keep that in, or go into what's called shock denial. There's a whole denial process that goes on. That didn't happen. So they're very busy trying to push that out of their mind as much as possible. But it's not going to go away. Right. There's a shock to it.
If I may ask, again, we're doing surgery here.
Yes, keep going.
The person's listening, and they're saying that this happened to me. What's shock denial, and how does it affect them today?
Well, if first confusion about their own sexual boundaries. If my mother or father can do this to me, in order for them to adjust to what had occurred, they're going to think to themselves, whether consciously or unconsciously, well, then it's okay for me to act out. I can have sex with anybody.
Wow.
Expose myself to whatever, to whoever.
Wow.
But these kind of responses are dysfunctional ways of coping with what happened because they don't know.
So promiscuity.
Yes, promiscuity.
Okay.
And any kind of what I might call, for lack of a better word, deviant sexual behavior.
Deviant sexual behavior. I haven't heard that term in a while. So yes. Deviant sexual behavior from the professional, again, our brothers and sisters that are listening, Counselor King is a professional at this. This isn't somebody who watched a few YouTube videos and thinks they know something. He's been doing this now for 30 years and has been working with trauma for so long. So deviant sexual behavior. The sister right now who's on the stripping pole, shaking her thing, doing something strange for some change, doing something funny for that money. The brother who can't seem to help himself. He's sleeping with woman to woman to woman to woman. He got a Rolodex of 10 women that he wants to sleep with the next couple of days, and he thinks he's accomplishing something.
Yes.
So these are signs of some deep personal family sexual ancestral thing, possibly.
Yes, and I think it also goes into obscuring or confusing the role of sexuality and just sex, period. Right? What is it? Right? People become confused about it because these things have occurred to them early on. But once again, if you look at the collective history of African Americans, and perhaps the fact that the slave master had his way with everyone in the family, right? It will warp or obscure any kind of healthy approach to sexuality. It can happen.
Wow, I want to make sure that I understand and that the audience understands, because one of the issues, 20% of our people we polled said sexual relations is a problem in their relationship. Now, some silly person, well, let me use a word better. Some unwise and uneducated person would think that sexual relations means that they just ain't getting none. Well, that is a problem too, but it could be in this case. Well, let me share with you a story, Counselor King. I met a Muslim brother. He's from the Sunni understanding of Islam. He said to me, he's an older man, he said to me, his friend, who was also a Muslim, got married, had a great Muslim wedding, gave all the takbirs and everything, and on the wedding night, I shared this story with you, Brother Khalifa, and on the wedding night, his wife went to change her clothes to get more comfortable before they actually commenced the sexual relations. And she came out of the room with a cat suit, whipping chains, and a mask, and started whipping the brother in a deviant way. Well, needless to say, he annulled the marriage because that's not at all what he was looking for. And they were older couple. I mean, older by our standard, at the time they were in their 50s. And I'm saying to myself, how do you initiate a relationship with someone with sexual deviant behavior? So analyze that for a moment. Analyzing that for a moment. Go ahead.
Well, I would look at. See, I would have looked at her experiences. I mean, obviously she learned that something happened to her. Something happened to her. You see, something happened to her, and she probably didn't deal with it, and so she kept on living her life, trying to kind of figure out why whatever had occurred with her had occurred with her. So as we try to kind of figure these things out for ourselves without any information, anyone can end up doing that kind of stuff. It's not surprising at all to me. It's not surprising, and the fact that the media puts it out there, it's in the society. Well, let's try this. You see?
It is. The trisexual is born. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, you're right, Brother. Make light of the situation.
Well, Counselor King, I want to start sewing up the wound real quick. We have about 30 minutes to go in the show, but we want to leave the last 15 minutes for us to close it out. So if you have another 10 minutes with us, that'll be great.
Sure.
I want to sew up the surgical wound because there's so much here. All right. You have a brother, you have a sister that's listening. They're saying to themselves that, yes, I experienced one of these, or if not all of these, traumatic events. I'm in a relationship or I'm in a marriage, and it has affected our marriage. What do you suggest that person do in order to save not just their marriage, but their own personal sanity?
First, begin to get counseling. Straight up. Get counseling and educate yourself on trauma. You can go online and there's a lot of information on trauma, right? Then begin to recognize that it is possible for one to change the physiology of the brain that has been affected by trauma. Personally, myself, I meditate, I pray, I change my diet. You know, I do Tai Chi. I work out. I'm very meticulous about what I eat. Right. One has to have the will to completely change one's lifestyle. Completely. First get educated, then look at your life habits.
Okay. I wanna hold off on the stitch that we're about to close the wound with and say this. You got a trauma victim who's been raped, molested, whatever, and out of their lack of coping skills to deal with certain realities, this person, male or female, has done some bad things. And I see that a lot when I'm in the community. You'll see a brother, I mean, it's happened. You see a brother who has anger management problems. His mother abused him badly. So now he got a gun, he shot 10 people, killed 3. Only thing I told a brother, one time, brother came to me and told me that, I said, brother, you're going to have to turn yourself in. You can't keep being on the run. I mean, that's different. That's an extreme case.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of Anthony Sowell, the serial killer?
Yes, I have.
Anthony Sowell, brothers and sisters who are listening to Nat Turner Library Radio, we mentioned him twice. He was a black male from Cleveland, Ohio, who was traumatized for his entire youth by his mother and aunts. He was sexually abused by them. He was molested and raped. He didn't realize that he was killing women, but he had killed about 25 to 30 women.
Yeah.
That's extreme cases of this. So you have people, though, Counselor King, correct me if I'm wrong, who have done bad things. They've committed infidelity because the man doesn't feel satisfied with just one woman. He needs to prove himself. So now he's married, but he's gone out and had sex with 10, 15, 20, 30 women out there. He doesn't feel like he can be redeemed. My question is, or the sister who is married and she's gone out and philandered with men and had sex with other men and even women, or whatever the case, and the same for the brother who's married. All of these, now they're listening to this and they're crying because they don't feel that they can be redeemed. What would you say from a psychological, academic perspective to those individuals?
The fact that they feel that they cannot be redeemed, that comes from shame, right? So that's shame, and we've already identified that shame comes with trauma. As a person is traumatized, they have to recognize that it's not their fault. It's not like come traumatize me. It happened to them. So it's a matter of educating them on the fact that feeling as if you can't be redeemed, that comes from shame. Shame can be overcome by understanding the very thinking process or the cognitive distortions of black and white thinking that guides one into feeling that I cannot be redeemed because there are many examples in the Quran and the Bible and other holy books that talk about people being redeemed from doing horrible things.
Yes. So we make sure we got this correct because we're putting the stitch back in. We're trying to close up the wound for now, and so the patient can heal. All right. You experienced this event. The person was raped. I'm going to use myself. No, this didn't happen to me, but I'm just going to use this. Okay, I was traumatically assaulted. My parents were divorced, and I was raped while in prison, or I was raped at a back of a high school by a senior, and I'm a freshman or whatever, and no one else knows this. And yes, I don't trust anyone as a result of this. I have intimacy relationship problems. I'm in a marriage. What you're saying is I should look at my health insurance, find out if mental health if mental health treatment is covered, find a mental health professional, and go and talk about these things with them.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
I want to make sure that was clear, because let me tell you the reason I was elementary about it. I've had this conversation, as you can tell, with so many of our people. I know a brother right now who, and it sounds silly to some of us, but it was very traumatizing to him. He proposed to a sister while he was in college. He loved her, and he went to see her and caught her having an affair or having sex with another man. It traumatized him so much that he went on a rampage and had sexual relations with 10, 15 women in 1 month and treated them like crap afterward to vindicate the anger that he had. I remember when a brother told me that story. And I said to him, my God, he lied to the woman on purpose. Hey, I love you. I'm gonna have, I want to be with you, just so he can have sex with him and throw him away.
Yeah.
So he went on a serial rampage, he told me.
Yes.
He didn't realize what was happening to him, nor did I. But that was many years ago when I was told this story. I know another brother who he's in his 60s now, who's never been married because he had a fiancée again. He loved her, and she was texting and having an affair with another man. And the pain of that was so bad that he vowed to himself subconsciously that he'll never trust a woman again.
Yeah.
So, these are unhealthy reactions, would you say?
Yes, they're unhealthy reactions, but they become unhealthy once again because with African Americans, we tend to kind of deny the trauma in our background, right? So I imagine from the brother you just got through explaining, he's experienced or has witnessed a level of betrayal and never got over it. You see, never really saw how that affected him. You see,
yes, sir.
And so he has a problem with betrayal. So okay, you got a problem with it. Okay, so let's look at it. Well, what happened? You see, let's check it out. I mean, obviously, he's a stand-up man. Obviously, you don't want to hurt other people. So before you do it, let's look at this.
Well,
so
let me. Yes, sir.
Go on. No, go on. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say to that point, our people, for some reason, want to self-medicate. We believe that we understand why I've talked to a lot of brothers, and a few sisters. Everyone, brother Counselor King, that I've talked to, everyone, they know why they do what they do. But how is the brain able to help itself? Can it help itself, or do we need someone to walk us through that process?
We need someone to walk us through the process. I got healthy because I had several people walking me through the process. You can't do it alone. It is impossible. Right. The very condition of the African American community is collective. It's a collective trauma culture that we have. We're all in it, right? So if we're all in it, we need to find a way of helping each other out of it. You cannot do it alone. And I suspect that some of the brothers and sisters that you spoke to and gave you those kind of answers, they're speaking out of their shame about it, but they don't know it.
Yes. I'm just a regular. Yeah, I'm just a regular person. When I saw these things, I was like, my God, something's definitely not right in the thinking. Something is off. Clearly. I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not anything. I'm just a brother who loves his people. And so when I see these things, oftentimes clergy, I got to say this, clergy, imams, ministers, pastors, I've heard some of the worst things come from rostrums about this because they don't understand it. I've heard everything, Counselor King, from get over it to Jesus will solve all your problems to just pray and it'll go away. Just forget about it. Does that work?
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. That reminds me of the analogy. Well, in slavery, right, or even the reaction to, I guess, the European community when they view African Americans struggling with their issues, they have the tendency to kind of blame the victim. Then it becomes even worse when you got African Americans blaming each other, right? So we're blaming the victim. It's not the victim's fault. They might be ignorant about certain things, but educate them first. Don't add to the wound.
Yes,
shame doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Shame doesn't work. Yeah, I've actually, Counselor King, been blamed for the attack itself. And one elder sister. When I was a teen, this is the first time I ever talked about rape with anyone. When I realized that this one particular family had multiple rape victims, and I said to this elder, the elder of the family, I said, "Why don't you get help for these people and yourself?" You know, by the time I was done with that conversation, she blamed me for all the problems that they were having. Yeah. And you know what I told her? I said, when these problems started, I wasn't even born.
Right.
But I became the point of reference because I was trying to help.
Well, that shows the level of confusion that I was speaking to earlier in terms of the mind and what happens with people when their spiritual, physical, and psychological boundaries have been invaded and ravaged and raped.
Wow.
It's a mess.
So they got to get help. Bottom line, they got to get help. They got to do it individually.
Got to get help.
They have to. Let me ask you a question. Does it go away with time?
It can if you do the work. I have a saying: if you don't do the work, nothing's going to change. So you got to do the work. You have to do the work. And really, at base, it becomes a spiritual struggle. You are fighting for your spirit. That's what you're doing. You're fighting for it. But if you don't do the work, it's not going to change.
Yes, sir.
Counselor King, you have given us some jewels better than King Solomon's mines tonight.
Okay.
You've given us some gold, diamonds, emeralds, and pearls. Treasure chest full. Somebody right now is meditating on what you've said and will be. And I want to give you the opportunity to take at least 60 seconds to give us some closing remarks on this subject.
Yes. What's important with this issue with the African American community is that we cannot forget that within our culture is riddled with shame. It is not our fault. We inherit this from our ancestors. And we are trying to regain our very spirit in dealing with the trauma that continues to plague our community. What's important is not to blame yourself. Recognize that it's difficult and that you can't do it alone. Seek help. Seek help, please. Seek help.
Counselor King, you've been a great helper to us tonight, helper to our people. If time permits and your schedule permits, would you be interested in sometime in the future coming back and sharing with us knowledge and wisdom that will help our community on these types of subjects and others?
Not a problem. I'd be glad to. It's just a pleasure to be of service. Just thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I would mention your services and where people can meet with you, but you told me you're so busy that, that you don't have time. Brother Khalifa, I did what I do with all I can. But Counselor King said, brother, my workworkload is so busy, I don't have time to meet with anyone.
Well,
so how does the person find...
One thing we're doing is I'm going to start a group. I'm going to be doing this in groups. I used to do individual, and I'm going to be setting up groups, right?
Okay.
To deal with this, but they can give me a call. My number is 678-542-9065. I'm here in Atlanta.
Okay. All right. So I'll say that one more time. Counselor Gerald Green is offering his phone number, so I'll put it out there. I didn't ask him to do that, but since he did, it's 678-542-9065. Brothers and sisters who are listening, 678-542-9065. He's a busy man. Please leave a message. Tell him what you're calling for, and he'll get back to you when he can. Counselor King, thank you again, and on behalf of the Nat Turner Library staff, We thank you and the audience that is listening. We got people. I'm looking at the area codes that have listening in. They're from all over the country. We got people from the West Coast, from Chicago, from here in Atlanta, from New York listening in. And the word is going to get out for the next week on the content of this show, and people will be listening in. So I appreciate that. And for brothers and sisters who missed part of the show, this show will be available on Blog Talk Radio and our Nat Turner Library page tomorrow, so you can listen to it in its entirety. This is critical for yourself, your family, anyone that you're having issues with in your family and your own self. Please listen in to this show in its archive. We're going to leave you as we greeted you, Counselor King. I thank you. You can continue listening in if you wish. We're going to close out the show in the next 15 minutes, but I want to leave you as I greeted you in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Brothers and sisters, you are listening to Nat Turner Library Radio. We were well fed,
Yes,
and I
indeed.
want to add 5 minutes, Brother Khalifa, since we have about 15 or 14. We got a 4-minute clip that I want to, for the believers of the Nation of Islam that are listening. It's a clip that we may have heard some, but I think we forgot. The minister speaking on the need to control the mind.
Meaning the foreskin of the heart must be cut away so that the stench, the things that you think that stink, have to be able to be washed. And how do you wash the heart? You can wash the male organ with soap and water, but how do you wash the core of your thinking and the seat of your own intellect to make sure that your knowledge is not corrupted? How do you wash that? See, water is to the body and soap is to the body what sincere prayer is to the seat of our intellect. People that don't pray, don't recognize God, don't recognize our need and our dependence on Him, then this thing begins to start getting corroded. And I want to show you, beloved, by the help of God, where this Satan fella is tonight. People that don't pray, don't...
All right. So I just want to make that clear. We got another section dealing with auditing from our beloved teacher and guide.
Along the way, by a father, by an uncle, by a cousin, by a friend of the family that was trusted, that came into the house and abused a young girl. How many brothers have been abused by other men, members of the family? How many of us suffer from things that have been done to us, and we hide it way back in the recesses of our mind, and we function, but that which has happened to us is an impediment to real flowering and growth and development. So we're embittered on the inside, but we praise God from the outside, but we're not healed. People raped, people abused don't get healed just by saying abracadabra. We got to know how to reach into their minds and bring out the demon that is hiding there that keeps them from being the child of God that they're born to be. But if you don't have the science of how to do that, then they come to church sick and they go away sick. They're in pain. And you have the power to relieve that pain. I recently called my brother Alfredi Johnson. Would you stand, please? I met him years ago. Reverend Alfredi Johnson. He wasn't a reverend when I met him. He was a brother in the audience that heard the minister and loved the minister's teaching and tried to become a Muslim. But those in leadership were so ugly, so full of their authority. And he was such a man, he wasn't going to take that stuff. So he said, man, I like the minister, but I ain't going in there. So he left, and he found the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard in Scientology. And I met him years later, and we talked. We've always had a cordial relationship. But I knew something about Mr. Hubbard a long, long time ago, when one of the man that was my first minister, when I saw him later, I wondered what happened, why he wasn't in the nation. He was a member of the Church of Scientology, and when I saw him, he said, you know, they have a process called auditing, where they ask the person to go back to painful moments in their lives, and they help them to bring it up and deal with it. And I remember him saying that everything that we have done in life is here. The Quran calls it the book of God, where all our deeds are written. This is your book. The book of Eli, I guess. It's right here. And everything we've ever done is here. And everything that's ever been done to us is here. It's on a time track. This is why, to me, see, this Jesus man, he is so bad.
All praise is due to Allah. You were just listening to our teacher and guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, speaking on the very thing that Counselor King has been studying in his counsel, and the need, brothers and sisters, the need to get these things up out of us. This show is about black marriage and relationships, the hidden reason for failure and divorce revealed. I'm going to say again, as I started the show, I didn't expect this information to come from the research that we had been doing. But it's here, it's in our face, and I've heard a lot of people, including some of our ministers, dance around this. You got to do this, brother got to do that, sister got to do this. Yes, that's true. But as we learned tonight, nobody can do anything until this mess is out our head. Would you agree, Brother Khalifa?
Absolutely. We have to realize what the disease is and then deal with it. It's not enough just to hit on it, recognize that it's there. It has to be dealt with, and it has to be fought. I mean, literally everything Brother King was teaching or talking on is literally right in sync with the Dianetics. We have to fight. We have to fight for our spirit. We have to fight for our well-being.
Now, Elder Baba Khalifa and I talked on this subject for about an hour, brothers and sisters, the founder of Nat Turner Library Radio. And he's a walking library card, or Dewey Decimal System, if you would, of black books. Because I just told him the subject, and he pulled out of his memory bank a book that deals with this. And I said, wow, and it's on KhaBooks, KHABooks.com. Hey,
right.
Hey, we need money. We got to do. It'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about money. Well, look, post-traumatic slavery disorder, brothers and sisters. I'm going to put this link on our Facebook page and the event page. Post-traumatic slavery disorder on KHABooks.com. It is a book with by Dr. Omar Reed, master's degree, Sekou Mims, and Larry Higginbottom, who is listed as the author. It's only $15. It deals with the psychological effects from professional perspective that we've experienced, as Counselor King was saying, on us as black people. I'm going to put this book here on the event page, okay, each of those. I want you to take $15 out of your extensive budget for entertainment and unnecessary things, brothers and sisters. As we said, it's gift time. You want to buy someone a gift, buy them a book. They can read more than they can eat, and so if you want to buy something for yourself, and this is a subject of interest, buy this book, khabooks.com. The link is on the event page for Black Marriage, this show, Black Marriage and Relationships, the hidden reason for failure and for divorce, and also we're going to put it on our Nat Turner page. And so what we want to do is make sure that this subject is touched. We will have this on archive, and for those who are familiar with going to Blog Talk Radio and actually going to the archive, I suggest wholeheartedly doing so and actually putting the time into listening to the show again, sharing this information with those. And brothers and sisters, please don't do what I see so many of us do. Don't point the finger and say, see, you need to thus and so. That adds a level of shame. Just bring the camel to the water and say, please drink, and leave it at that. It's already bad enough that the brother or sister went through the traumatic event. I've done that, Brother Khalifa. I've told a brother, look here, man, you just came out of prison and Bubba stuck you in your thing. You need to go do this and that. Man, what's wrong with you? That doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It didn't work for that brother. That brother just left the fold,
Right. That's right.
It didn't help him to yell and scream at him about it. And as Brother King told us, that doesn't help anybody. Only thing that happens is the person gets re-traumatized and shamed all over again. This is sensitive stuff, brothers and sisters. And Brother Khalifa, I want you to have our final comments for the show for tonight. But I just want to say, I pray that something we said tonight, something that was mentioned tonight, brothers and sisters, was of a benefit for you and your family. And please do as Counselor King said. If you are looking for Dianetics auditing, do so very quickly. Don't wait till next year or it's convenient for you. If you don't know about that, get you a psychological counselor. Do it for yourself. Nobody has to know. Just do it for yourself. And be fair and honest with your mate. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Right. We know that, when other folk, particularly white folk, just use straight words, whenever any type of a traumatic event happens, there's a school shooting, there's a shooting at a workplace, the first thing that we hear about it on the news reports is, counselors are being sent in to, heal the people who actually survive, to heal the survivors, to heal their psyches. And nothing has really been done collectively to heal our psyche, because Brother King was talking earlier. It just has not been done. Really, there's some very excellent information in that book, Post-Traumatic Slavery Disorder. But with all due respect, we are really still in a slave-like condition, semi-slave condition.
Yes, sir.
So the title of the book, and the information in the book is very good. I've read it, part of it, not all of it. Is very good, but we are not quite over it. As Brother Michael said, if you're not necessarily interested in the auditing, by all means, get yourself into some type of counseling of some kind, because most all of us fit within each one of those ACEs, if you will, one of those traumatic experiences. None of us really have escaped that. Now, if you haven't, like you mentioned the poor sister who said that divorce isn't a traumatic experience, but you grew up in a nice nuclear family, then all praises are due to Allah, God, you're good. But pretty much all of us have suffered something and we may not even necessarily know it. And that's actually what Dianetics goes into, because there's a whole lot that we experience actually in the womb, and that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother time.
We're going to get into a lot of this about boundaries and what happens, inshallah, in a couple of weeks or after Savior's Day. Brothers and sisters, stay tuned. The Nat Turner staff is on the scene. Our next show will be dealing with marriage, black marriage, relationships, and the boundaries. But spend these next few weeks, brothers and sisters, pondering over this, and we're going to leave you as we greeted you in the words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace and blessings, man.
There are lots of things you can spend your tax refund on, but one thing you don't have to spend it on, a new smartphone. Switch to Metro PCS now and get not one, but 2 free 4G LTE smartphones for brands like Samsung and LG. Plus, you're on T-Mobile's blazing fast nationwide 4G LTE network. Hurry! Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free smartphones after instant rebate. One heck of a deal, only at Metro PCS. Limited time offer. Sales tax not included in phone price. Coverage and services not available everywhere. See store for details and terms and conditions.